about 2 to 3 minutes per side.
All right. Calling to order the meeting of the Salem School Committee of December 16th, 2024 at 7 p.m. This meeting is taking place in person at 29 Highland Avenue, room 227. You can also join via Zoom using the link posted in the meeting agenda. We have one member participating remotely, although they shall be here shortly, so we will take votes by roll call vote until they arrive. First matter is approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Member Cornell, seconded by Member Campbell. Roll call vote. Member Campbell,
Yes.
Member Cornell,
Yes.
Member Hoffman,
Yes.
Member Manning,
Yes.
Member Miranda,
Yes.
and myself, yes. And we will now cease with the roll call votes. Thank you. Public comment. The Salem School Committee would like to hear from the public on issues that affect the school district and are within the scope of the committee's responsibilities. Spanish interpretation is available for anyone who needs it. The members of the school committee would like to remind the public that Salem Public School students regularly attend school committee meetings. We encourage all meeting participants to model respectful and productive public discourse for our young learners. Is there any public comment in the room? Any public comment on Zoom? Seeing none. Approval of the consent agenda, the minutes of the school committee meeting of December 2nd. We have a field trip requests for Boston for the Harvard Model United Nations Conference and February trip to Belize, as well as the warrants of December 5th and December 12th.
Are they looking for chaperones? No, I'm just kidding. Second. Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion made by Member Campbell, seconded by Member Miranda. All in favor? Or under discussion? Other questions?
I'm sorry, I think I missed something. Did we just make a motion to approve both trips? Is that?
Yes. In the
Okay.
consent agenda.
Would you like me to amend? my motion?
No,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
fine doing that. I just thought that the Belize trip was on the agenda, so I thought it was coming later. But it's not, I thought it was a presentation coming.
Oh, no, it's just.
Got it.
The materials are in the backup.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? The matter carries. Student representatives report.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's calling you. It's your turn. Oh,
Your part.
my fault. My glasses
Sorry.
broke.
Stop distracting.
Today I accidentally came a little bit late, and I think I missed a little bit of the meeting because I came at like 10:50. Thank you. And there wasn't a lot of people there. But I do have an update on the graduation. We got a poll today in the email about changing the location of the graduation for either Bertram or Salem Common. And I think that is a really good step in the direction of changing the location, which is what Kate Hepner and Dwayne Stavros wanted to do.
Any questions? Comments? Member Corn?
Well, maybe
Oh, no, you go first. No, you
I
go
just had a question, like how does, I think this is a question for the superintendent. So if the students are petitioning to move it to Bertram, how does that, what are the, that is what, do you all have consensus on that?
Yeah, so one of the big issues raised in the meeting we had was that we wanted to move the graduation from the Commons to Bertram because it would be a better venue and there's less, like, it's not in a public area. And so there'd be less, like, people walking by, less cars, and it'd be more, like, to have, like, the actual graduation. And that was the main reasoning behind it.
Yeah, that's great. So I was just curious what the next steps are to make something
You know,
like that.
I think the students thought that that was the school committee's decision or the mayor's decision, and a lot of things are his decision, but
This ain't one.
the decision really is that the school's decision to make about location of the graduation. And what Mr. Burns and I felt, we were approached by some students about this, members of the advisory committee, and we just said, yeah, if that's what the students want to do, I like the Common, but it's not my graduation. It's not my decision to make. So if they really want it to be at Bertram, and they, will support it. And I guess the step was that they would survey the students to see what the student body wanted, and we'll certainly support whatever the student body wants. And so I guess we'll get the results and then make a decision from there. But I think ultimately then that's the school's decision to make about the location. Mark, I did want to also just share that we got some additional names of students from New Liberty who want to join the Student Advisory Committee, and so I was going to forward them to you. I don't know if you got those names.
I don't know if I did get them.
Okay.
I can check again, but
I'll forward them to you. Nevin sent names for you to consider and interview to be part of the committee.
all right. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Superintendent's report. Just right.
That's me. Yeah, thank you. So I guess we'll start with, I'll just start with my evaluation documents, and then we'll pass it along to Jill Conrad, who's going to give us a presentation on our, on human resources. So first of all, I want to wish everybody a happy holidays. This is the last meeting before the break. It's hard to believe that we're coming to the end of a very busy calendar year, but very appreciative of what I think has been a very successful year for the Salem Public Schools, and a very busy year for the Salem Public Schools. But in that vein, this is the time of year that I do my evaluation and self-appraisal. And I just want to, I'm not going to read this all to you. It isn't more than 10 slides, but it may be more than 10 pages for you to review. I gave you a hard copy, and I also emailed it to you. There's two different parts of the evaluation. The first is the rubric that they use, the state uses for superintendents, and there's 4 categories: instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture. And so I gave you my reflections for the year in each of those areas, and then a series of areas of growth kind of more holistically around places that I think I can improve and the district can improve on. Try to highlight some of the successes, and then again at the end, areas that we can improve as a system. And that's similar to what I did last year. Obviously, the reflections are a little different because every year is slightly different. And the second part is I have to set a series of goals every year. One's a student learning goal, one's a professional growth goal, and the other is a district goal, like a district improvement goal. And a lot of what's the reflections on my goals, there is some overlap between naturally the different areas of superintendent effectiveness, or and so I gave you some reflections, and then I provided you like a series of evidence to support what how I think I did relative to my goals. The first goal is just about student learning, which is connected to priority 1 of our strategic plan. So I shared a lot of documents related to the achievement and improvement of student outcomes, and then areas that we still need to improve. The second area of professional growth, my commitment was to listen to voices of students and parents more than I had in the previous year. And so I shared information related to, the student advisory group, work with the parent advisory group, and then different opportunities that I had throughout the year to listen to student voice and surface the student and family input on our work as a district. And then the district goal is really our strategic plan. And so the efforts to monitor the plan and give progress updates both to the school committee and the community about how we're doing relative to our strategic plan. So that's how I've oriented that. And so as a school committee, you have to review both my progress toward the goals I set for this year and then the overall evaluation of my performance as a superintendent. I assume that Mr. Cruz will send out information about the rubric like he does every year, and then you'll have a timeline by which to provide me with some input. And as always, I appreciate any of the feedback. By no means do I think I have nailed every aspect of the job. It's a near impossible job to do that, and so I appreciate any input that you can give me on how I can continue to grow as a practitioner. The last thing I'll just add is that I'm very excited that finally, I think by the end of this calendar year, we will have a public dashboard related to our strategic plan. So we already have a mock-up that will be on our website. I just got to figure out how to move it to our website. And it'll be up there that just shows all our measures of success and how we're doing relative to those measures of success in real time. So you can point parents to that by priority. You can click on each of the priorities and see how we're doing relative to that. And actually, in my evidence, I share a a PDF of what it's going to look like, but I hope to have it ready to go by the time we come back from break in a few weeks. It's almost done. So anything else, Mayor, related to that? But you have a hard copy, and then you also have a electronic copy of my reflections. Any questions or comments related to that? That was less than 10 minutes. It might have been less than 5 minutes.
Oh. All right.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to have Jill Conrad come up. And we wanted to share some reflections on staffing. Our efforts, we've talked a lot about diversifying the workforce here, retaining teachers. That came up quite a bit during our negotiations. Our efforts to invest in our most talented commodity, which is our staff, and how we continue to make sure that the best stay with us and want to work, grow, and stay in the Salem Public Schools. And so Jill's been very busy, and her team has been very busy, and we're very pleased to share with you an update. This is very similar to the presentation that was given last year. The good news is we're trending in an even better direction than we were around some of these things, and look forward to your questions. Turn it over to you, Ms. Conrad.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here again. As a reminder, our human resources staff is staffed by 2.5 people, myself and Nancy Weiss are full-time, and then we also have Kim Melionek, who works half-time in the HR office. And I guess I do this. Whoop. There we go. So we continue to be very, very busy in our office. There's a lot of stuff that just cycles through, as you can see here. This just gives you a little bit of an idea. I did the same thing last year. Started doing this really because we are looking to kind of track the volume of things that come through the office. So this is giving us some insights into all of that work. Some areas where you're going to see a significant increase from last year would be the job postings. Part of that is because, number one, when I presented last year, it was just July to November. This is last November to this November. We are also doing more job postings for everything that we are hiring for. So that's another reason for the increase. On the new employees hired, that also represents the full year of new employees. The total number from July to this point in this school year is 163, as you'll see on the next page. The other place where we're really seeing two big increases is in the number of leave requests that we're seeing. We are seeing an increase in leave requests this year. Some of that may be due to the new leave language in the teachers union contract, and lots of talk about leaves and whatnot perhaps could be making people more aware of it. And then licensure, we have seen a significant increase in the number of waivers. One of the reasons for that, there's kind of like 3 buckets with the waivers. We've hired back many folks who were on waivers last year who still are not licensed, who need a second year waiver, and they're working on it. We also have a number of those who were on emergency licenses, who now need to become waivers. And then we also do a fair amount of hiring of what I call the almost licensed. They're in a program, they're going to be getting their license within a year or so, or within a few months, but we still need to put them on a waiver. Digging into the new hires for this year, you see the breakdown by union type or group, and also by schools. And the total, and that's just July to November, is 163. That's pretty much the same level as what we saw at this time last year. If you look at the comparison, the next slide shows the numbers of new hires year to year. as we've been tracking that. So a little bit higher at this point in the year from last year. I do think part of that is driven by we've been doing a little bit more hiring of subs, daily substitute teachers, to try to really build up the sub pool so that we have more options of actually getting subs when they're needed. The number of transfers are a little bit fewer than last year, 167 compared to 194 at this point last year. As you recall, we had a significant number of transfers last year. This year we do have quite a few, but I will say that many of those are within the same school. Transfers, not necessarily from one school to another. So people moving from one position to another. We are doing a better job overall as a system documenting all of those kinds of transfers and moves, which is really good to make all of that more transparent. Looking at the resignations, this is where I see the really good news is that we've seen a great drop off in the overall number of resignations so far this year compared to where we were last year. And I think you'll see that playing out in some of our retention data, which is, I think, the key data point that's part of our strategic plan. On the next slide, you'll see the teacher retention rates, and this is what's reported by DESE. Based on the EPIM results, which is the Educator Personnel Information Management System. For those who don't know what EPIMS is, a super fun data point there. So 79.3% is what they were reporting for a teacher retention rate from last year. So that would be like October 1 to October 1 from the year prior. So we don't yet have the published rate for this past year because our EPIMS report, along with many others in the state, has not been certified yet. Apparently there's a delay with that at the state level. And so I had to kind of do our own estimation of it. So the key thing here, though, is to look at 22-23, where it dipped down to 70.9, and then we got it back up to 79.3, and I think we're going to be even higher than that in the coming year, based on what we're seeing with resignations. So let's keep our fingers crossed. So that will bode well for our strategic goals.
Can I just ask, can you remind me, what is the strategic goal target for retention?
Well, it's really
85.
85 for teachers of color.
No, we have 85 overall, but
Overall.
for teachers that are
Yeah.
rated as proficient, which
Right.
most of our teachers are. So
Yeah.
85 is really what we've been shooting for.
Yeah.
And if we hit 85, that would be very good. Would be very good in a year, given our, that we're pretty. We have a decent amount of churn, but anything that would get us close to 85, I would feel very comfortable with as a system.
Yep. So on the next page, you'll see the historical view and focusing in on what we've called our greatest staffing challenge, which is retaining our staff of color and our teachers of color. The top line, which is in orange, our percentage of students of color in the district, which has continues to go up gradually up to 62.2% now, whereas the rest of the lines represent different types of staff members. Looking at the all staff of color, we and this is not retention rates, this is the overall percentage of the population. We're currently at 26% of our staff, our staff of color, and 15% for teachers, 34% for paras, and around 18% for administrators. So the key point here is that it's trending up from where we've been in the last couple of years, except for administrators. However, if you go to the next slide, in our new hires, just since July, we have hired a greater percentage of administrators of color coming in. So that should help over the long term with the administrative category. It's a small number of administrators, but it is, and that includes all types of administrators. Okay. So this page is looking at just the diversity among the new hires from July to November. So going back to the retention rates for our staff of color, when we look at all staff, we're looking at a retention rate, and that's, again, this is estimated based on our own data, 66.7% currently, and then for teachers of color, 78.7%. And our strategic plan goal was 85%. I think we can link this to some of the anecdotal feedback and feedback we've gotten in our panoramic staff survey results that is showing a greater sense of belonging. As you know, as part of our efforts has been working with, a lot of the work that Laura does with the affinity groups and things like that, creating a welcoming environment. I think we are seeing some good indications that has been bearing fruit, which is nice to see. So if that's a sense of kind of where we are now, looking ahead, we are really focused on building on the successes that we feel that we have established. We definitely have some challenges as well. Some of that involves continuing to work on the data to make sure that we have more and more data that we are actually able to use for analysis and to develop strategy. Continuing to expand our recruitment strategies. Early hiring, we will be implementing the Talent Finder Fellows, which are recruitment fellows, existing teachers who were working part-time with me last year to help our recruitment efforts, giving sort of a personal touch and being able to talk with prospective candidates about what it's like to actually teach in Salem Public Schools. We have also applied for the Teacher Diversification Grant. Again, I know Veronica was part of that last year, and we're, fingers crossed, hopefully going to get that again. We're also looking to expand our pipelines. We have a number of irons in the fire in that regard, so to speak, including, work around early college, the para apprenticeship model that's developing, our continuing partnership with Salem State, and we are in the beginning process of exploring options to do what they call a J1 visa exchange, possibly with the Dominican Republic. That's something that could really be a great benefit to us in the coming years. Continuing to work on sorting out the licensure situation. We have a new partner at Salem State that's funded by DESE to support those who are somewhere in the licensure journey, so I'm working closely with them. And then continuing to work with Laura and others on building the culture that we want to have for people to work, stay, and grow. So I am happy to take any questions. I think that was under 10 minutes. I don't know. Was it?
So,
They're making fun of me.
questions from the committee, except for Member Cornell? Member Manning?
Yeah, I have a couple. Thank you. That was good, and it was under 10. Are there, when you're talking about the people working on their license from the waivers in the second year and all that, are there specific like regulations from the state on a certain amount of progress someone has to make in a year? Okay.
Yes, there is. It's a very specific defined. If we go for a second year waiver, or even a third, or what have you, they have to show continuous progress, and
Who defines that?
DESE does.
So do you roughly
There's a set of
know? I mean, is
criteria.
that like 4 courses a year or 1 course a year?
Sometimes
or?
it's courses or taking an MTEL prep course. However many times they might have attempted to take the MTEL, or passing at least one of the MTELs. Many times there's more than one MTEL that they need to take. Sometimes it's a mentorship, or there's a competency model, which we're beginning to do a little bit more of for certain situations where they're supervisors and coaches are able to mentor them and verify that they've completed so many hours,
Okay.
in whatever the competencies
And
are.
so to follow up on that, so if it's like complete so many hours or something, is there, like who determines like that those hours were well spent? Like
We do.
You do.
We- I
Okay.
mean, the
state
district
says
does.
how many, but you have the
Right.
capacity to
Right.
approve
So-
or disapprove in the system.
Yes, and this is
Okay.
particularly important in the special education department. Monique is here, I know. She's been involved in a few of those verification processes. So I think we're beginning to have conversations with Executive Director Jennifer Dissat-Lee and other leaders in special education to really identify what are those things if we are going to do something more internally
Yeah.
for some of our educators, because some of these people are existing teachers who teach who have licensure in a different field and used to teach in a different field who've moved into special ed roles. And so we're trying to support them through the process.
It's okay. So that then leads me to another question. Is there a percentage, and this may be more for you, I don't know, is there a percentage of like in the special ed department, a certain percent that you can have of teachers who are in that position who aren't certified in the special ed role that they're in? Like, could we have more than half of our special ed teachers not certified in special ed?
I don't know that there's a specific limit like that. Amanda
No?
might know.
No.
That's comforting, isn't it?
Desi's does have, thank you. Moved it away while I was laughing at my colleague here. It's been good fun. Desi does have like requirements for how to continue to earn the waiver, but it's up to the district to put them up for the waiver, which is what I think maybe you're getting at. And then it's usually more of a back and forth, but as far as I'm aware, there is no requirement for like X percentage of teachers. It would where it would show up is in your tiered focus monitoring. So when the state comes in to evaluate
Right.
you in your special ed, your ELL, tiered or ELE tiered focus monitoring, that's where it
You're
would
not gonna
probably
look
come
great.
up, but because it impacts whether your services count towards the requirements or not. But beyond that, no, there's no specific
Okay.
requirement.
All right, thank you. That's one. I had another question. How are we doing, and do you know if we had put something in about retired teachers having a different, payment for subbing if they were retired from
Oh, yeah.
Salem coming? How is that working?
Well, the word has gotten out. We have had an increase. I would say, what, we have 5 or 6 now, whereas we had none
Oh,
before.
okay.
So, it doesn't,
So they're not beating down the doors.
Are you
What?
looking to come back?
Yeah.
Yeah. yeah. So, I mean, I think from our end, it seems to be going well as far as people who are experienced, who know the schools. Often they're going to their school where they
Yeah.
retired from, in many cases.
And do we have
So
any?
it would be interesting to follow up and see what the actual experiences at the school is to find out if that's.
Are we putting those folks into like a long-term position?
There have been a few, yes.
And so if that's the case, are we requiring that they be certified or licensed in the position that they're now becoming a long-term sub?
In the cases where that has happened,
special
they
ed?
are, yes. In the
okay.
cases where that has happened, they have been licensed.
Is that just luck, or do we actually have that as a?
My sense is that it's more that the principal knows of someone
Yeah.
or the special ed office knows of someone for, say, a parental
Excellent.
leave or something, and they've reached out to someone who
Okay.
they know might have availability.
All right.
So.
And then one more. When you talked about the numbers of transfers, do you count a transfer if a teacher asks to move, or only if they're transferred? Even if it's one in the school, is it a move that a principal makes? Or is it like, I feel like going to the second grade next year and there's an opening, so I'm going to move from the fourth to the second? Is that a transfer?
I don't think I would be able to differentiate that from the HR office, because the transfer happens when the principal sends what we call the PAF to me, which that teacher may have initiated the conversation to
Right.
move to a different grade level, or the
So there's
principal
nothing
may
on the
have.
PAF that determines the teacher request versus principal said, you're moving.
Right, so that would be more of a school level conversation. There isn't we don't have a transfer process where a teacher says, I want to transfer, like a long time ago.
Well, there was between schools, I know, a long
now
time ago,
it's
too.
just
Yeah.
the jobs are posted
Yeah.
and they apply
Yeah.
online.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Other questions?
Just a couple things that I want to punctuate that Jill shared. We are really working on two important pathways. One is the Grow Your Own pathway for our students to become teachers. We're working with the Smith Family Foundation and Latinos for Education around that. And we are looking at whether there's early college pathways, and Salem State's involved in those conversations, and we have some funding to help get that off the ground. What's been challenging is that not a lot of students want to become teachers at this point, and that's something that's concerning for the profession down the road. But we've got work to do. We have also, I think, got to have to incentivize them to come back to work in the Salem Public Schools. And so we need to have more conversations about that. But that's a big push we're going to try to make, is to try to make it, create incentives for students to go get their 4-year degree and come back and teach in the Salem Public Schools. The second is, and I mentioned this to STU President Berman today, is we are looking at an apprenticeship model with actually a community college, probably Middlesex Community College, that will help our paras and PSRPs who do not have any, who have limited credits or don't have bachelors, to get their bachelors by giving them credit for their work experience, which is sort of a new approach, and the community colleges are willing to acknowledge the fact that their job actually is experience towards getting a bachelor's, which it should be, and at no cost, 0 cost to them. It's all free, all-night courses. And we would then help them get an associate's to then parlay that into a bachelor's. So we're working with, I think the STU will be good partners in this, and there's one model like this in the state in Lowell Public Schools, and we're trying to replicate something like that with Middlesex Community College. So I do think for many of our paras who want to be educators, they don't the barriers, they don't have a bachelor's. So that's what we really have to help them with. If they did have a bachelor's, it's much easier to get. And many of our paras who do have bachelor's, we've already moved them into teaching positions. Over the last couple of years. So I just want to call that out. The third thing I just would like to point out is around retention of staff of color. The one thing Laura and I have learned, or I've learned from Laura, I should say, is that where we struggle is we do have buildings where the culture is not right for staff of color. There's very few staff of color, and they are narrating that it's not as healthy of a place for them. And so we're starting to see major discrepancies or differences in buildings around, and there are certain schools that have large numbers of staff of color. We're starting to see critical mass of folks, and the culture is right. There are others, and what Laura has done, which has been really smart, is had meetings at each school to hear directly from staff, because it does. While I think we try to be supportive as a district, we're also learning that every school is a very different place, where students and staff of color maybe feel more or less, like they belong in those spaces. And so that's something as a district we've started to hone in on, is like targeting support in certain schools. And then again, I think there are some places of celebration where we do see, like the numbers keep growing of staff of color, and you can see it when you walk the building. It's much more reflective of the student population. So, and a lot of that comes from the culture that the leader has set in the building, and we certainly have some work to do in some places. So I just want to call that out. We're learning more and more about those conditions. We've seen, we're now a quarter of the staff in the Salem Public Schools are staff of color. There should be no parade yet, because that's a big gap. We still have a lot of work to do. We don't have enough teachers of color in the system. And as Jill pointed out, we do not have enough administrators of color. We do have some assistant principals. We still have too many mid-level administrators, and not enough building leaders and executive leaders at the district level, and that's something you all should continue to hold me accountable for.
If I can just add to that, I mean,
Yep.
just looking at the data of five of the six last years, the rate at which the student population became more diverse exceeded the teachers.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that while
Good point.
to your
Yep.
point, like there's, I think, great work being done around educator diversity and overall staff of color, the teacher rate is not keeping
Is
pace,
not
with,
keeping
the,
pace,
with the
yeah.
student population.
Yep.
That's right.
And, you know, I'm very optimistic about the Diversity Act that Manny was very involved in, that, you know, will push districts, all of our districts, except we're all fighting for the same folks. And I think I do see the future as building from within, you know, and I will just say, today I had the experience of being at, visiting classrooms at Collins, and 2 math teachers of color, both well, I'm not going to say the grade, but 2 math teachers of color we observed, both who have ties to Salem and are staff that both started in our community with our community partners and are now teaching math. I don't want to just see teachers of color teaching Spanish or teaching in the bilingual program or the dual language program at Bentley. We need to see teachers of all backgrounds teaching science and math, and so that was encouraging, but they came from within Salem. We didn't go on a national tour to recruit them. It was people from our community that we've got to invest in, and they're doing. I mean, they're making an impact on kids, and that makes a big difference when you can look at your math teacher and say that they're a person of color. So, turn it back to you, Jill.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just thinking, this is probably more of a comment/question, but for both of you, when you were talking, Dr. Streich, about the partnership with Middlesex Community College, it was making me think about DESI's new registered teacher apprenticeship program,
Yes.
and I'm wondering if you guys have looked into that at all. Maybe not for this round.
We
for
have, but
future years.
my concern with that is that they're focusing on people with bachelors.
No.
Are you sure about that?
Fairly sure, yeah.
Okay. Because that was my concern, and that's why we have got, Jill's participated in those webinars, but we were less inclined because we felt like our folks needed something different than what they were offering, which I was under the impression was for people that already had bachelors.
Interesting. I'll double check, but when I went to it, so we have a teacher in training fellowship program for dual language teachers in particular.
Yep.
And so we're hoping to spin that into an RTAP.
Okay.
And so my understanding was that it was for people working towards their bachelor's, not with it existing, but
Can you let me know
yeah.
about that? We have, we've not, I haven't personally, but I know Jill's participated.
Yeah. I think we have a number of early and some further developed pipeline programs, and I think we're trying to navigate and figure out, where we should spend our time. We have limited amount of time also to focus on developing new pipelines and staff capacity to manage that as well. But we've been keeping our ears open and trying to learn about it. So I'd love to follow up with you to learn more. I did participate in the initial webinars and came out thinking, I'm not sure what this adds beyond what we already have with Salem State, but I think we can take another look.
Questions? I have a quick question about licensure. Do we know the percentage of teachers who are on waivers or not licensed?
Well, we have, so for this current school year, the number is 75. So out of 500 teachers, what's that percentage?
Thanks.
What is that, 15%?
About that.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, good guess.
Is that something it's not part of the strategic plan, right? It's not a goal or...
It's not something we have in the strategic plan, but it's certainly something I track, in general. I'm hoping that the situation will be different next year. I'm hoping that our new salaries will enable us to recruit people where there are vacancies who are fully licensed and experienced into our roles.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Happy holidays.
Good update. Back to you.
Yeah, that concludes my comments for this evening. Although I think there's the budget fiscal update on getting used to the new format of the agenda.
We have a MSBA update.
MSP update and then finance and operations report. Okay, I'll do my best to MSBA update. So we have we have one more public meeting about grade configuration and the future project, the Salem High School project, like the initial conversation. It's going to be in Spanish only on January 13th, which is a Monday at Espacio. It will be in Spanish, and then the interpretation will be done on the headsets in English for anybody that comes. Please spread the word. And I know Laura's trying to get the word out on our WhatsApp to a lot of our families, our Spanish-speaking families. So we hope to have, that will be the last of this series of conversations about the building project. And then, it will come to all of you to discuss grade configuration at some point. We do have a building committee meeting on Thursday, where they'll be discussing some subcommittees around different areas that need to be focused on related to the project. One area that we have to hone in on is our educational plan that I will be working on with Lisa Golden to at least to put some preliminary ideas around matching our educational vision to a preliminary design of the building, and trying to think if I've left anything out. Anything else, Elizabeth, that you?
Well, just as a reminder that we held 4 community sessions,
Yes.
one with staff, current Salem Public Schools staff, and 3 with community members, and they were, I would say, well attended.
Yeah, and we have notes that I will share with the school committee in addition I met with the parent advisory group on Thursday night, or Laura and I did, and we had a conversation with them, which was a good discussion. We had 2 groups talking about the grade configuration. I also have some notes from my teacher advisory group, and then, as Elizabeth said, we did have a staff-only conversation, and then there were the other 2, the other 3 meetings which were open to the public. And I appreciate it. I know it's a tough time for people to show up, but I do appreciate all the folks that came out for that. But again, Thursday evening is the building committee meeting. It is open to the public. It is from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. It will be televised, put the video online. And the project will start moving at a much faster clip now, between now and hopefully when the building opens in who knows what millennium. But at some point, it will open. So get ready for the ride.
And just to add, the location is the high school.
But thank you. Finance and operations.
Just a quick update to say that we have begun to ask principals and department heads to start their thinking about what FY26 will look like. We'll have more information in January when the Chapter 70 figures are available, when the governor releases her budget. So in the meantime, Member Manning and I have met to begin sketching out the finance subcommittee schedule, and we'll be bringing a report to this full committee in the new year with our mapped out timeline.
I'll just add one thing. When I met with the parent advisory group last week, the one thing that they had a lot of questions and they wanted to talk about was the budget, because I think they are fully aware that we knew we had indicated over the summer, or also last budget season, that this was going to be a tough fiscal year. Certainly as we have new obligations, salary obligations, as well as the rising cost of doing business. They know it's coming, and they were very interested in helping us make decisions. They also offered to look at the budget. We have a couple of auditors in the group, and they wanted to go line by line to support us. One was an auditor in the Dominican Republic, and one is an auditor here in the in Salem. And I think they're just they're concerned because they just want to make sure that we we preserve as much of the integrity of what happens in schools as possible. So, and the other thing they said is we have to continue to do a better job of PR. They were clear that we're not that we could do a better job of telling the story about how well things are going at Collins Middle School, and that we're not doing that well enough. And I think they're right about that. And they were clear that like we needed to get out in front of, inviting families to the upcoming showcase and continuing to not spin, that's the wrong word, but tell the story of what's happening here at Collins. And I think that's really important feedback for me to hear and for all of us to hear as we try to really showcase what's, they had a lot of really positive things. Many of them have children who go to Collins now, and how much improved the experience has been over the last few years. So that concludes my comments, Mayor.
Subcommittee reports. Finance, billings, no. Okay. Motions and resolutions. Policy 5103.
Motion to approve policy 5103, control choice student assignment for first reading.
Second.
Moved by Member Cornell, seconded by Member Miranda. Under discussion?
I guess I can just make a note about it, which is we just took advice from Laura Assad and Kate Carboni around not having such specific dates that we're locked into to make the process smoother for our families and to make it easier to understand and access, and also make it easier for the district to get on top of assigning students earlier. So I think provisionally, I wish Manny was here, were here, because he usually explains this language. But we've done this in the past where the school committee approves, gives the administration the green light to act on the changes before we get to a third read, which will just make the process easier. Hopefully somebody can help me to, I don't know how does one word that?
Well, it was pretty.
You've done it. We did it last year.
Yeah, it was just basically the dates, right? With a key thing that we just said go ahead and move on that to start with, just because the dates were going to come up. So.
So, I mean, I wish. Remember.
I mean, I wouldn't call it substantive changes in
They are. Yeah, that's true. They're not particularly
they're
substantive, but
more logistical changes that. The folks that are actually doing the work asked us to make an adjustment that it would make the work more reasonable and ultimately more beneficial for parents that are trying to figure this out.
Then I'll propose to make a motion to accept the changes in the student assignment policy for a first read, and also to give the administration the green light to begin implementing those changes
Without
immediately.
waiting for third reading.
Without, prior to subsequent reads.
I'll
The
second.
specific date changes, I think it was.
That was a motion, right?
Yes, thank you.
You seconded it?
She seconded it.
Okay. So, motion is amended by Member Cornell, seconded by Member Miranda. Continuing discussion. So I note that there's also changes referencing the pre-K program relative to the ECC and striking out references to the middle school program at
Right.
Salem. So there's also corrections to the
Yeah.
policy based on the actual configuration of our schools.
Right, which would be,
Instead
if
of already taking-
those had been the only changes, we would have labeled those non-substantive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any further discussion or questions? On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The matter carries. There was a request to revisit our resolutions regarding, or to revisit the district's equity statement and LGBTQ plus inclusion statement. Those are provided to the members in the packet. And I'll entertain a motion to reaffirm both of these statements, if separately or together, or
I'll make a motion to reaffirm both of these statements, the equity statement and the LGBTQ plus statement.
Second.
Motion made by Member Miranda, seconded by Member Campbell. Under discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the matter carries. Announcements. No announcements. Sorry.
Sorry. I just want to note to the committee and the public that we are getting new information now about the graduation requirement that was just, the voters just passed the support for, well, question 2, which means that now the MCAS can no longer be used as a graduation requirement. But there is work that local districts have to do. And so we're in the midst of trying to figure out what the requirements are. There is a call with the commissioner this week, and the new guidance that I sent to the school committee in my weekly notes I shared. But it might call for us to take some action as a school committee on just certifying whatever our graduation requirements are, which will be local now. At this point, because there'll still be an MCAS, but the MCAS cannot be used as the graduation requirement. So I just want to put that out there. And there are going to be a lot of questions that we have to answer for families and kids who have not yet passed the MCAS, and have to show. These are students. It also may include students who didn't pass in the past. Supposedly, they can now come back and request us to relook at their graduation standing. So just stay tuned on that, and I will be in touch with the school committee if there's any policy things that need to be updated related to that. So
How far back is that look back?
that I don't know, and so those are all it's a really good question, and all 3 of the high school principals and I will be on this Zoom on Wednesday to better understand the implications, and it will be discussed at the board meeting tomorrow, the Department of Ed board meeting. We're in a period of limbo right now as we try to understand the implications of now this passing. So stay tuned.
No further announcements?
I have just a concern. I don't know, it's not really an announcement, but I just wanted to remind folks that, with the horror of another school shooting, and it is a horror, and we're so at risk, I think, as it's just another news bite now to some extent to folks. But, I just want to make sure that we're remembering that the effects of these things are so cumulative, and that our students are nowhere near Wisconsin, but it's in their heads too, and it's in our staff's heads too. So, as we approach tomorrow and the next couple of days and the next, months and weeks and years and whatever, that we keep that in the forefront, that, there very well could be kids sitting in front of our folks tomorrow, or people in front of kids tomorrow, that this is another very traumatic event, and we need to be aware of it and be prepared to support that, and just not pretend it didn't happen, or not just ignore it and say, well, it happened again, and go on with life, because you can't do that. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. Anything further? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned. Happy holidays.
I have one more question.